Hey, this is Zacklog the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate.
Hello.
And we are joined tonight by Jeffro Johnson.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
And also by one John C. Wright.
Good evening.
So this is a somewhat special show because this is the first time I've had two special guests on the same night. Jeffro Johnson is the author of, among other things, Appendix N, A Literary History of Dungeons and Dragons, and he recently is a contributor to the collection The Penultimate Men, which just came out recently. Do I have that right?
Yep, it's based partly on the Gamma World sessions, first edition Gamma World sessions I ran a couple years ago, and it's got pieces by John Mollison, Neil Durando, and Sky Hernstrom in it. The researches, I delve into the literary antecedents of the post-apocalyptic genre as it came into 1970s tabletop gaming, and interestingly enough, the winning secret of old school role playing that I unearthed in the old works was direct inspiration to my really great AD&D campaign that's been going on for several months now. So it's super exciting, and it's a really fine looking book. You really have to have a copy.
Stop commencing.
And Mr. Wright is recently published his Pangea trilogy, which that's
quadrilogy. No, I'm sorry. No, my mistake. Trilogy. It's the only I managed to actually make a 3-book trilogy. That has never happened to me before. All my other trilogies are 6 or 10 books.
The increasingly inaccurately named Hitchhiker's trilogy.
Math was not my strong suit.
So, we are getting together tonight to talk about Robert E. Howard's poem, "The Return of Sir Richard Grenville." And two notes before we get to that. One. For those who might be interested, I should shortly be hosting a discussion on the recent Jim Butcher novel, Dresden Files novel, Peace Talks. Probably recording that next week, so it will be posted fairly soon. So if that sounds interesting to you, keep an eye on this channel. Usual, if you like my work, if you'd like support what I do, stop by subscribestar.com/Zacklog-the-great. Link in the description. Bleh. And having said that, Mr. Wright has volunteered to read for us The Return of Sir Richard Grenville. So I am going to put that up on the screen, and he is going to enthrall us with his deep, manly voice and the poetry of Robert E. Howard.
Stentorian voice. Okay,
that's
ready?
A good one too. All right, let's see.
Stentor.
Let me know when it comes up on the screen.
I can read it from my screen either way. Do you want me to begin?
It's up.
Well, okay, good. We got it.
The Return of Sir Richard Grenville by Robert E. Howard. One slipped beneath the branches dim, cloaked in the crawling mist, and Richard Grenville came to him and plucked him by the wrist. No night wind shook the forest deep, where the shadows of doom were spread, and Solomon Kane awoke from sleep and looked upon the dead. He spake in wonder, not in fear. How walks a man who died? Friend of old times, what do ye here, long fallen at my side? Rise up, Sir Richard said. The hounds of doom are free. The slayers come to take your head to hang on the juju tree. Swift feet press the jungle mud where shadows are grim and stark, and naked men who pant for blood are racing through the dark. And Solomon rose and bared his sword, and swift as tongue could tell, the dark spewed forth a painted horde like shadows out of hell. His pistols thundered in the night, and in that burst of flame he saw the red eyes with hate alight, and on the figures came. His sword was like a cobra's stroke, and death hummed in its tune. His arm was steel and not an oak beneath the rising moon. But by him sang another sword. A great form roared and thrust, and dropped like leaves the screaming horde to writhe in bloody dust. Silent as death their charge had been, silent as night they fled, and in the trampled glade was seen only the torn dead. And Solomon turned with outstretched hand, and halted suddenly, for no man stood with naked brand beneath the moonlit tree.
Okay. Let me. All right, where is it? Close off the. There we go. Okay. So, Jeffro, this is the first time you've come on for a Solomon Kane poem. Would you like to lead off?
Oh gosh, man, there's so much going on in here. First off, Fantasy Africa, Pulp Africa is like the best Africa. This is so. I'm just gonna presume this is where this is taking place, and it never quits. Just thinking from it from tying it into D&D and the current trends and all of that. Having the supernatural here being a first class element, and gosh, it's just so there's no winking, there's no awkwardness about it. It's just like, of course, of course, D&D today, these elements are like have been decade by decade filtered out of it until people don't even understand what alignment is anymore. But and
this
then one last bit here. Everybody I've ever heard that has slammed on the pulp authors have never struck me as being particularly literate, but these guys who made trashy adventure stories to entertain normal everyday Americans from all walks of life, I think it's striking that they really were men of letters in a in a non-trivial way, as evidenced by an appreciation for and a quite level of skill with real poetry. It doesn't fit the narrative, and it's really striking just how good this is.
Well, and the other thing is, like, he has his fictional demon slaying hero running around, and his fictional demon slaying hero is also friends with a real historical figure, and who and he's working in well, not in this one so much, but in the other one, working in details of his heroic last fight. Well, heroic from the English point of view. The Spanish probably weren't quite so enthralled with it.
You mean the devil dons of Spain?
It is kind of funny because, like I said, I just recorded the talk with Tom Kratman on Lepanto, and in that one, the Spanish Navy was one of the big heroes.
Well, Don Juan of Africa rode off to war. Excuse me, I said the wrong name now. Don Juan of Austria. I said the wrong. I've been contaminated by Africa.
Nice.
Well, it's because the pulp Africa, as Jeffro correctly says, you could run into a vampire queen who flies naked under the moon, and in another 100 miles of venom-infested, rhino-haunted death jungle, come across a completely intact city filled with ancient Romans. Because all those things were in Africa back in the old days, because no one had mapped the interior.
Oh, yeah. Oh man. Oh, also Arabs, slaving, things to climb, and very, very scary cannibal people. It's all there. Oh, and English waifs kidnapped and taken to.
They're all throughout the continent. It's just scattered with them.
It's the best place for adventure anywhere. It's like people they pick up Solomon Kane and they read the first one. They read the other stories that are set like either in America or Europe somewhere, and it's like no, just go straight to the Africa stories. That's the real Solomon Kane there.
Is it true that his magic wand that he picks up from an African friend of his is Moses' wand that he used to part the Red Sea, or did it come from Atlantis earlier?
Yes.
You see, you want to talk about literary. You want to talk about guys who knew how to tell a story. His Solomon Kane's stick is interesting. Okay, I mean that's how this guy works.
Well, if I recall correct, I'm on. If I recall correctly, in one of the stories, he speculates if it might not have come from before even our universe as we know it, because he uses it to drive back some horror that pre-existed man.
You have to use the word Eldritch. You have to use the word Eldritch in that sentence somewhere. Eldritch horror that pre-existed the rise of Adam.
I don't understand how that can work really, but I don't really look on it in fear. I look on it in wonder.
Well, there's some things man was not meant to know. The pulps are pretty clear about that. Now, Sir Richard Grenville was a real hero in real life, and I think the thing that's amazing about the pulps, which are often sneered at these days, is that the writers apparently expected his audience to recognize and know these names, and a modern audience just would not. I don't know if it's the quality of the education or what it might be. He mentions Sir Richard Grenville in one other poem in Solomon Kane's Homecoming. And I was wondering if you guys would let me read those two stanzas from that poem just to give us a little bit of Kane's background, where he met him the first time, because this is him meeting the second time. May I?
Yes.
Yes, let me, here, give me a moment. Let me get that up on the screen here. Where do we have it? Screen share. And there it is.
My favorite narrate when Sean narrates the bringing things up.
The people followed wonderingly to mark his spectral stare, and in the tavern silently they thronged about him there. He heard as a man hears in a dream the worn old rafters creak, and Solomon lifted his drinking jack and spoke as a ghost might speak. There sat Richard Grenville once, in smoke and flame he passed, and we were 1 to 53, but we gave them blast for blast. From crimson dawn to crimson dawn we held the dons at bay. The dead lay littered on our decks, our masts were shot away. We beat them back with broken blades till crimson red the tide. Death thundered in the cannon smoke when Richard Grenville died. We should have blown apart her hull and sank beneath the main. The people saw upon his wrists the scars of the racks of Spain. The number 53, by the way, is correct as far as we know. It's the battle of Richard Grenville in a ship called the Revenge. Isn't that a great name for a ship?
Where have I seen that story in a story? Wait. Dread Pirate Roberts.
The Dread Pirate Roberts has a ship named after Richard Grenville's ship. And he had been he returned to rescue some of his men that were cut off when the English attacked the Spanish pirate fleet, and they were outnumbered 53 to 5, and Richard Grenville would not flee. So.
And if I understand the story correctly, he was even ordered, there were orders. Okay, we're leaving, we're fleeing, and he's like, no, we're charging, and he pretty much went forward with his ship alone. And then he ordered, guys, we're not going to win this. They're not going to have this ship. We're going to sink it. And his men did not follow those orders, and he cursed them when he died a couple days later for as traitors. Although Spain didn't keep that ship because a storm sunk it just a few days later. Now, if you ask Robert E. Howard, I'm guessing he would say that storm was moved by the angry ghost of Sir Richard Grenville.
Whoa.
It could be entirely possible.
I think it's safer not to inquire too closely into these things.
Yeah. That's one of the things I like about sort of these type of stories is the just sort of bald face acceptance that, you know what, we're just going to leave it alone. I do not need to open that black box. We're just, whatever's coming out, it's coming out. I'm cool.
Well, and also like as a what is it, stoic? That's a good word. The stoic hero Solomon Kane. Not only does he see a ghost, he's woken up by a ghost. So like this is the first thing when he wakes up, he sees a ghost and he's like, "You're dead. How are you here?" He's not scared. He's just, what's going on, guys?
It says clearly that he feels wonder and not fear. How walks a man who died.
Look, Ebenezer Scrooge was right to be scared of ghosts. But like
Solomon Kane knows
Kane
he's
is a
pure.
righteous man.
Yeah.
He's got nothing to fear from the supernatural.
He doesn't think of himself as a fanatic. The author tells us so.
Well, I mean, look, it's the ghost of dead man past coming to help him find the ghost of dead men future. It's all right.
Do you see a parallel between this and the scene that was so good in Queen of the Black Coast starring Conan the Barbarian that they put it in the movie too, where one of the dead comrades of Conan comes back as a spirit and parries the blade that would otherwise kill him? What? Same author. I don't want to spoil the surprise ending, but I already have, and if you haven't read Conan, then make Crom curse you from his mountain, because it's the same idea, the same scene that the brotherhood of blood, the mystical bond between people who fight back to back and stave off all the horrors of the world is so strong that even death cannot stop your comrade from coming to your aid. And I think that was part of what was going on here.
No, and that was what I wanted to say about this whole thing, is that I love that trope, sort of, ghostly benefactor trope. Whether it's Sir Richard Grenville, Hank Williams, or a big Marine named Camouflage, it's always just like this great story where it's like, yeah, this guy turned up out of nowhere to help me out, with the situation I was facing. And then when I tried to thank him, he was gone, and there was no possibility that anybody could have left that fast.
Well, okay, and I'm going to throw in something here. One of the very few country music songs that I genuinely like, which is Riding with Private Malone, has that one as well.
You would like that song.
Well, in general, I don't like country music, but that song, for some reason, just hit.
In that case,
please notice,
mystical bond is the love of a classic Corvette, so... Yeah.
Well, please also notice that the country music and pulp fiction all has an overlap, because they both speak to very simple, primal, common man understandings of things that these guys are the salt of the earth. Now, like you said, Robert E. Howard himself might have been a man of letters, but he was also a Texas guy who hung out with roustabouts and oil field men and gamblers and all sorts of rough customers, He said that's what Conan was based on. I assume that Solomon Kane was based on his local preacher. He'd have to be a Baptist, though. I mean, come on. Oh, excuse me. He was a Puritan. What am I saying? I don't want to be theologically incorrect here.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, you gotta be respectful here. This is like the one hero, the one supernatural Christian themed hero out of all literature that's a Protestant. Usually they're Catholics, I mean, no. If you've got a vampire, if you're plagued by vampires, you never go to a Baptist. That's just.
But I was disappointed in the Solomon Kane movie because it opened up with him staying at a monastery with some holy brothers.
Oh, no.
Apparently, the guys making the film couldn't tell the difference. Friar Tuck, Catholic, okay? Solomon Kane, Puritan. It should be pretty clear.
Well, let's see. Is Robert E. Howard's in the public domain yet?
I believe he is in Australia.
Could we get a movie made in Australia?
Well, you'd have to overcome the eldritch horror of the standing rock in the middle of the blasted desert. No man has returned from there.
I don't think they've ever shown. I don't think Howard ever showed Solomon Kane doing anything other than adventuring. There's no there's no real backstory to it. He just comes out of nowhere, and
I'm
it's
a
just
Puritan. Things happen.
100% vengeance.
Yeah, he comes
Well,
across a
okay.
dead body and he vows vengeance for him. And he walks into the bad guys when they're drinking and gambling at their cups with his sword in one hand and his pistol in the other. Isn't he like an Old West guy? Do you see a parallel there too between like the man with no name? We should resurrect Clint Eastwood to play Solomon Kane. But I'm not sure if a resurrected man could play a holy man. It's difficult. It's difficult to say.
Well, I will say, in terms of backstory, oddly, the other poem that references Sir Richard Grenville actually gives him just a little bit of backstory, because we know where he came from. He came from Devon,
Yes.
and and there was this girl there named Bess.
We know he's sweet on Bess.
And he was brokenhearted to hear that she died.
I bet it was his wandering ways. Yep.
Was there a yellow bandana involved in this at some point? No.
No, not in that one. What?
No.
Where is that coming from?
Oh, that's just it's an old song. The soldier who goes off to war.
Tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree.
No,
it's a ribbon. It's not a bandana. Get your clothing articles correct.
When your cholo goes off to war, you tie yellow bandana around a cactus or something.
He comes back from war, and the yellow bandana that he'd given to his sweetheart was on the cross by the tree where they had said goodbye. So yeah, she was killed by the very people that he was sent out to fight. So we're tapping into the Western tropes here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say, like, you can't. That's the great thing about Howard. You got someone in the mythic West, sort of, interpreting all these fantastic ideas. It's like, comparing him to Tolkien, say, like, he really is our Tolkien. Speaking as a Southerner. There's just something foreign about the Shire to me that I can't relate to. But like, Howard, on the other hand, he speaks directly to me. Revenuers, coming for people that are, brewing things out in the woods. That sort of thing. It just hits a little closer to home.
Well, and he also, let's see, he's had Robert E. Howard has not written just sword and sorcery fantasy. He also has a few stories about a boxer whose name I can't recall right now. And then there was one where these guys are fighting. At least one where these guys are fighting some kind of voodoo man in the swamp. Who was leading a group of black men there, and when one of them displeased him, he, I think it said, gave them to the swamp, and they got turned into these weird alligator human monster hybrids. So Robert E. Howard covered quite a bit of territory. It's not just Conan and Solomon Kane.
Oh no, and his historical stuff is like spot on. It's really it's as opposite of the zeitgeist of today as you can get, because when you read his historical fiction, he takes people from our heritage as English speaking people, and he shows them to be every bit as heroic, every bit as audacious, every bit as inspiring as Cole and Conan and Solomon Kane. It's really quite. It's in the same way that a Southerner might be inspired by Jeb Stuart or Robert E. Lee, for instance. He takes people from our past that I don't even know who they are, and he just brings them alive and makes them. It makes me feel like that the ideals that are so exciting to me have really, really deep roots that go even further back than the Enlightenment.
Steve Costigan, by the way, is the name of the boxer.
Okay, yeah, that sounds okay. That sounds familiar. I will say, okay, so talking about the return of Sir Richard Grenville, and this is the third Solomon Kane poem we've covered. As far as I know, there aren't any more. There's one featuring King Kull, where he gets into a fight with an ant, and no, I mean that's pretty much what happens. Doesn't use the name because Tolkien hadn't published that yet, although Tolkien had probably already come up with the name. But yeah, King Kull gets into a fight with an ant, and comes out the other side. But this poem, as compared with the other two Solomon Kane poems, it's a lot simpler and more straightforward. Like this is a relatively straightforward adventure story. It's not bad, but there's the one black spot. He's like, the captain did this horrible injustice. I've got to go. The captain of my ship did this horrible injustice. I've got to escape the brig and go wreak God's vengeance upon him. And then he finds him, finds the captain tortured by the decision he. And then the homecoming is Solomon Kane comes back to finds out that you really can't go home again because this
it's actually quite a melancholy. It's actually quite a melancholy piece. It's not actually about any action or adventure. It's about the fact that once you walk the path of an adventurer, like you just said, can't go home again. Everyone you know is dead. Your memories are haunted you. That people look at you like you're a ghost. And the world you live in is so strange compared to normal English countryside guys. You've seen vampire queens fly all naked beneath the moon. You've seen people who left over from Atlantis.
And so those two have a good bit more complexity. This one is, like I said, a relatively simple adventure story. And so
I love the line, "The Slayers have come to take your head to hang on the juju tree." It sounds like a folk song. See?
Is there a jub bird at this at some point?
I believe Dr. Seuss was stabbed to death by Solomon Kane for his.
Wait, no, that was Lewis Carroll. Come on, keep the nonsense writers straight.
And for the
Oh no, you're right. I'm sorry. It was Lewis Carroll. How silly of me. How silly of me. No, I don't think he could beat the Vorpal Sword. I'm sorry. That would be an even match.
I really like after you read a bunch of Lovecraft and the protagonists are always frightened. They're too scared to do anything. It's really great to be able to take the same oeuvre, flip over to Robert E. Howard, and just see evil get punched in the face a little bit.
Yeah.
It's really confident. It's unflinching. It's assertive. It's the utter conviction of good triumphing over evil. There's just nothing. There's no other outcome that's possible.
Englishmen will justly mock me for saying this, but H.P. Lovecraft is an English writer and Robert Howard is an American writer. I would say a Yankee writer, but I don't want to offend my Southern brethren. But I do insist that he's like a blue collar cowboy kind of field hand, common man sort of guy. Even though, like I say, he's very literate. But that was back in the day when I don't think the common man necessarily saw himself as different from Robin Hood, King Arthur, Sir Richard Grenville, George Washington, any number of tough cowboys. I would say the Lone Ranger, but he's make believe. Any Texas Ranger, okay, could be Conan. Any Marine.
Audie Murphy. We can add him to the list.
Audie Murphy's a good example.
Yeah. A short man from Texas. A man of the wild.
Yep.
But no,
And you
that's
see
what-
that in,
that's the
in
point
like,
that is made.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's a point that Louis L'Amour makes in a couple of his books. He has his characters talking, and he's saying that another pulp writer, but he's talking about how really a lot of the men of the ancient epics would feel very at home in the American West, and a lot of the great mountain men would have been just at home in the camps of Troy. They would have looked. There would have been in no way out of place, pulling a stroke alongside Odysseus. All of them were stout, hard-handed, tough-hearted men who were there to weather the problems and win the glory. And just that their particular milieu was the Rocky Mountains and the Great Plains versus, the wine dark seas. And so it's like they all really they're archetypal heroes in that they don't take all this this agonizing approach to things. They're very bluff, straightforward. Like you said, let's punch this in the face. What's our problem? Ram a spear through its chest. Is it still a problem?
Full speed ahead, damn the torpedoes. I noticed that one of my favorite books, A Princess of Mars, which is often dismissed as a mere boyhood adventure story. If you read the opening, it's a cowboy and Indian story.
100%.
And then when he goes to Mars, it's the same genre because the Red Martians, the Green Martians, just like the dark painted shadowy men with red eyes that come out of the jungle here to mug Solomon Kane, they're just the savages. They're just the forces that are arranged against where the beautiful women and the civilized men live. But emphasis on the beautiful women, because we are talking about Dejothoris. Although I must note that Solomon Kane is above all that. Aside from the single mention of Bess in the homecoming poem, he is pure. He does not fool around. He's no Conan who has a different girl in every short story.
So he's not coming to the same downfall that you see in like our earliest epic heroes run into.
Well, isn't it odd he's named Solomon when he doesn't have Solomon's weakness?
That is actually pretty funny. He took the wisdom of Solomon and left the foolishness.
No, he's got Cain's weakness.
He holds up the mark. He's under the mark of Cain, right? Because no man can strike him. No man can kill him.
But then, no, it's like even like the Epic of Gilgamesh. I think Enkidu, like he actually is brought low by a woman.
Not true. Not true. He is civilized by a woman, as every man who used to be a bachelor can testify.
This is true. But
no, what brings him low is
overcome.
What is he killed? Is he killed by Humbaba? Is he killed by a monster?
Yeah, it's the beast in the forest.
Yeah.
Or wait, was it
here's what I remember, and scholars will mock me for being so forgetful.
He was
Enkidu,
incomparably vital, and just the wildness of him. But then once he was civilized, it took that from him.
The wild beasts were no longer his friends. You see, the same thing happens to Mowgli at the end of the Disney movie, when that cute little girl sings a song, a siren song, and lures him into carrying his pot of water. He can't go back to his animal friends. He's become civilized.
I would be willing to bet that Rudyard Kipling actually was, if at least unconsciously, thinking of Enkidu at that part, because the parallel is too close.
I don't know if that occurs in the original story. That's in the Disney film. I don't remember anything like that in the original.
Let's see.
I just find it interesting that this man that is a product of civilization runs out, and he spends so much of his time in these uncivilized places having savage battles, and there is no girl. There is none of that sort of idol on him.
And there's no reward. Conan sometimes ends up with some loot, but this guy gets nothing. He gets no reward, does he? He doesn't
Well,
report to bounty.
Conan ends up as a king.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
then he has to, fight off, people repeatedly who are trying to assassinate him because they don't want to have this, crude barbarian, ruling over their, sophisticated
It's not
Aquilonia.
that. It's not that, sir. It's just that civilized men are treacherous. They're not honest like barbarians. I noticed that Solomon Kane is one of his few civilized men who is fighting barbarians who are more barbarian than he is. You know what I'm saying? What
My lovely wife has brought me.
There's
I'm sorry, say again?
My lovely wife has brought me food. I just wanted to interject that.
She's
We're
trying to civilize. She's going to civilize you, and now you will not be able to run with the animals anymore.
She has civilized about, roughly 58 pounds onto me. So, yeah, I'm already stuck.
Well, it's not. I'm not saying there's not a good benefit to it after you get Dejothoris. For one thing, your son Carthoris can show up in the sequel.
Okay.
Sorry, but that's outside the scope of our. We're talking about Solomon Kane. That is John Carter, a Virginian, by the way, just so you guys know.
Well, yeah, all the best heroes of the South.
All the best heroes from the South. George Washington, John Carter of Mars. Who cares about anyone else?
I can't think of a single Yankee that has made a significant contribution to American history. I'm really struggling.
Wait.
The first shot to the moon was done by M.P. Barbicane, who was a Yankee. He was from Philadelphia, and he built the biggest gun ever. Now that's impressive. That's something Americans can do. But I'll point out that was in a French book, so we don't know if it actually happened because the French are all liars.
I will add that I think we're in the middle of it right now, but I think 50 or 100 years from now, I think Donald J. Trump will merit a great deal of respect.
All right, I will give you that.
Unfortunately, the several wars that will happen between now and then is the only record of him will be memes and takeoffs of people who thought he was the God King of Warhammer 40K, and so they will think that's what he looked like the God Emperor from.
Is there a way to remember him that's more true to the man, though?
That's not what legends are for, buddy. You think Solomon Kane didn't have his problems? Robert E. Howard just didn't tell us about the times he was filled with doubt or tempted by greed or lust, okay? We only get the part.
There is at least one story in which he was briefly tempted. Because what is it? Oh crud. It's the one where the Vampire Queen, the city of the
Moon of Blood.
The Moon of Blood, yes.
Wait, I answered too quickly. I'm not sure if that was the one. I'm not sure. Go ahead. Oh, she wants him to be king.
Right. It's his. This is Robert E. Howard's take on Opar, Law of Opar and Tarzan. It's his reinterpretation of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Conan would have said yes.
Well, he would have been bored. He would have just gone along with it if it was interesting enough.
I don't know if he would have said yes to. Wait, was that queen actually human? Yeah, she was.
Nah, I don't think so.
I
think she lost her humanity over a long period of time. So Kane had gotten together with Aisha from what's his name? I can't think of his name now. Drawing a blank.
Haggard.
I think you should have stabbed her. Not that would have done any good. She would have just pulled the sword out and had her men beat him to death. Or tried.
So let's see. One thing about this poem, to return to the poem, as I frequently end up saying, it honestly kind of feels like, with the kind of the abruptness of how it starts, this actually feels like, and kind of also ends abruptly. This feels like this actually was in the middle of one of the other stories. Like, this feels like, it belongs in the middle of one of the Solomon Kane roaming around Africa dealing out justice stories. I don't know which one it would fit best with, but...
Well, the savages are hot on his trail, so he must have just killed some king or evil priest or something.
Well, there's the one... You know what? I think it's probably the one where he met his blood brother.
Yeah,
What's the guy's name?
Nalanga.
Yes. Who gave
By the way,
him...
for those people who like to see racism in all things, the guy was the blood brother of the guy who gave him the juju stick. I mean, these stories back in the day do not reflect modern values, but modern values are corrupt. These guys were heroes, and they recognized heroism in other men, no matter under what guise they walked.
Well, and he also, in another story, he, saved a group of African villagers from, depredations by a city of vampires, with the help with quite significant help from Umhlanga. He would not have pulled that off by himself.
Yeah. Now, I do notice that there is a slight bit of racism. It's against the Spanish, those horrible Catholics and their Inquisition.
Well, I mean, you talked about the...
But they deserve it.
Right at the beginning, you spoke about the dead dons of Spain, and I was like, that makes it sound like the whole country is run by, like, this cast of, like, dusty old liches just back up in there.
I said devil dogs. I didn't say dead dogs.
Oh, I thought you said, quote, dead dons. My ear decided to mistranslate you.
Well, let me quote from a line, if I may, from this was written by Alfred Lord Tennyson, the same guy who wrote Idols of the King. And he wrote up the story of Richard Grenville fighting at sea. And one stands out in the middle. I won't bother you all with that. He had only 100 seamen to work the ship and to fight, and he sailed away from Flores till the Spaniard came in sight, with his huge sea castles heaving upon the weather bow. Shall we fight or shall we fly? Good Sir Richard, tell us now, for to fight is but to die. There'll be little of us left by the time the sun be set. And Sir Richard said again, we all be good Englishmen. Let us bang these dogs of Seville, these children of the devil, for I never turned my back upon Don or devil yet.
Wow.
Wait, that is not... For some reason, I was under the impression that is a much longer poem.
Oh, it is. I'm just reading one. I'm reading a short stanza out of a zillion.
No, I'm sorry. I was looking at it while I was looking it up while you're reading it, and it's a little bit over 100 lines. For some reason, I thought it was like 500 or 600 lines, and so if I can, I might be able to do that one yet someday. Although I will have to have a significant lead. I will have to be able to get some other shorter ones recorded and piled up, so that I would have time to memorize 120 lines. But that would be doable. Yes,
and
that poem.
The dead that had been so valiant and true, and he had holden the power and glory of Spain so cheap that had dared her with one little ship and his English few. Was he devil or man? He was devil for aught they knew. So, and if he can get back from the dead to help his friend Solomon Kane, well, obviously it's the Inquisition are right, and these guys are heretics, and they're dealing with black magic. I see it now. I take it back. Go King Philip.
So, Nate, are you trying to get us a product placement from Dr. Pepper?
Whatever helps.
I mean, I'll take the money. I'm not proud.
You should be proud if you're getting money from the greatest beverage on earth.
Yes. So yes. I'm not native to the American South, and that was one thing that was a bit of a surprise when I moved down here. We have Dr. Pepper up there. It's not nearly as big a deal, though.
Well, Dr. Pepper's from down here. I was born in El Paso, Texas.
That makes me wonder where Coke came from.
Georgia.
You know what? No.
Coke is Georgia.
Or
Focus from
Colombia,
Georgia.
depending on what usage you're talking about.
Colombia.
7-Eleven also. 7-Eleven is from Georgia, Southland, Georgia.
Great American icons.
Well, it's because Georgia was the penal colony where the English would shove all the Irish who were too unruly, and they, of course, would go out and make plantations like Tara, where scarlet came from, or they would make new innovations.
I guess that must have been before Australia.
About the same time. About the same time. The English had lots of penal colonies. They had lots of criminals. They're a small island.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Louisiana was settled a fair amount, at least, by you'd release a convict, and you'd say, look, you have a choice. Go back to prison, or marry a prostitute and move to Louisiana, which explains so much about New Orleans. And all of our politics since ever.
And they can't bury their dead because of the swampy water, so they have kind of a Mardi Gras sort of attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Good Catholic folk.
So let me see if I can wrangle us back to the poem somehow.
I've got one last question. I got one question about the poem. Notice
Yes, how does Grenville parry the swords if he's a ghost? How does that work? Is it ectoplasm? Is the veil part?
Yeah,
Sorry,
my
I
question,
talked to you. I apologize.
my question was, why is it that Solomon Kane is so loud? Like he's thundering, and why the things that are attacking him they're silent in their charge and they're silent when they flee.
Well, I would guess in this context that, like, you know, the stealth, the silence, is, you know, kind of a mark of perfidy.
No, it's woodcraft. It's woodcraftiness, like American Indians.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
yes,
say.
that too.
They're the savage natives. They don't have the same ideas of honor. You know, so it's both.
So it's white privilege.
Combat. Yes, we have the privilege of being noisy and awesome.
Yeah,
battle cries and things. These guys have got to be like, over here.
So yes, so Solomon Kane.
We'll shoot them with our guns.
In a literary sense, from like the literary perspective, it's because Solomon Kane is the, you know, righteous avenger, and he doesn't have anything to hide, and so he comes out loud and, you know, unashamed, whereas his attackers are the, you know, slinking and cruel and, you know, corrupt, and therefore they have to work in darkness and silence.
I'm not sure that's quite right, because most of the savage blacks you see in Solomon Kane stories are bold. They're quiet because they're dangerous, the same way American Indians are in cowboy and Indian stories. They're silent because they can move through the woods without stirring a leaf or stepping on a twig, unlike the clumsy big people. And they're deadly. It's a mark of their deadliness. It's like not being able to see the Black Panther at night, you know? I don't think it's a mark of their corruption. And these guys don't seem to be cowardly, and they don't seem to be tricking him or anything. Not, at least not in this short poem. They just want to cut his head off and hang it on a magic tree because they're savages.
If Grenville had not awoken him, they would have slit his throat in his sleep.
Yes, because they are savages. I agree. They don't have the honor code of a Christian man who will gun them down with his blunderbuss. No, excuse me. He carries a one shot. He carries a whatchamacallit, a wheelock.
Sorry, now I'm thinking of a line from Firefly. I'm gonna see if I can find it. Where is that? Because it's one of the if I ever kill you, you'll be awake, you'll be facing me, and you'll be armed. And so Mal Reynolds.
Mal to the young doctor.
Yeah. I think Mal Reynolds could get along with Solomon Kane. He'd be a slightly more hard-edged preacher.
I think they got the color of the coats wrong in that series. I think they should have been gray, not brown.
Yeah. Yeah, because Mal's a Southerner too. He's clearly a Confederate Army officer.
I'm still waiting for when the people who are tearing down.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry. You both spoke at once.
Nate, go ahead.
I think that would have been a little on the nose.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the people tearing down statues to figure it out and come to take down Firefly.
I don't think that people tearing down statues actually care about anything aside from the fact that we like statues. I mean, they started burning churches. That's not that's not a political question. That's a religious question.
That makes.
It was.
I'm at a lot of loose ends recently. I can travel to places, and I'm well armed. I'm just.
Well, that's why we need more Solomon Kanes out there, because he would not put up with this kind of thing. And the barbarian savages are noisy, pink-haired, overweight. So they do dress in black, except that they don't worship an honest god like Mumbo Jumbo, god of the Congo. They worship like Moloch and sacrifice unborn children to him. We need him. We need Solomon back. And I say this as a Catholic. I say this as a guy who does not like Puritans. They're too pure for me.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, and in context of things that would be canceled, that would not be allowed today. This poem is pretty high up in the ranks as well, because he doesn't ever say it, but you put together a few clues, and it is a white man, defending himself against an attack from a bunch of black men, and doing it successfully. So that would
But they'd find another reason to get it, because it is heroic. It's heroism these guys don't like. Race has very little to do with what they decide to cancel. They say it does. I don't believe them. But I apologize again. I've taken us off topic yet again. This is why my editors have to cut me down to merely 5 or 10 books in my trilogies.
That is how these discussions tend to go as well.
What a lot of people would have a problem with is the lack of ambiguity here.
Yeah.
Well, why are they attacking him?
Which is funny, because Solomon Kane actually...
in his sleep.
Which is funny, because Solomon Kane is actually a little ambiguous. Although the author says he is a Christian and who doesn't think of himself as a zealot, his worldview is just as dark and moody as that of King Kull or of Conan of Chimeria. Solomon Kane lives in a world of ancient secrets and sleeping evils that are thousands of years old or millions older than mankind. That's not, how can I say this? He does not live in the world that Richard the Lionheart, the Crusader, lived in, where he thought that Jesus was behind him with a sword, or Saint Iago or something, if you know what I'm saying. He does not display a Christian worldview in the story. He displays a moody, melancholy, pagan worldview like you'd see from Achilles or Hector, a guy who fights even though he knows he's doomed, kind of flavor. I mean, maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe I'm wrong. You guys correct me if I'm
He's a dour Puritan. He doesn't have a sense of humor. It's take a dour Puritan and just add, the unstoppable, programming of a Terminator.
There you go.
Marching across Africa. He's not going to stop.
The Scarlet Letter, but with Cthulhu monsters.
Right. And that's the thing. He's, like I said, he is. He's basically running Old Testament software on New Testament hardware. It's like, all right,
Christians were a lot that way. That's why they picked Old Testament names and stuff. I mean, that's legitimate.
That actually was the Puritans,
yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is that, like I said, it's not that his worldview is pagan or anything like that. It's that his worldview is very Christian, and it shows him very starkly how you deal with pagans. He has sort of one of the harshest doctrines that he adheres to. And so he is a product of his culture, which is a very razor edge black and white. Gray is something you see while the light's coming on.
I stand corrected, because it occurs to me that since he is really Old Testament, let's say antediluvian, right before the flood, which he's helping to spread, he's got Bronze Age morality. He's got a Bronze Age outlook.
Well, and he also would probably be pretty comfortable, or he would know. He wouldn't flinch from dealing with the Nephilim, for instance.
No. In fact, he was outside the ark holding them off with his sword while the water was rising up around his knees in time for Noah to get away. That part didn't make it into the Protestant version of the Bible, but it's in the version under the Pope's throne back in Italy.
It's in the Apocrypha, I think.
Yeah. There's the parts we never told anyone that Constantine the Great told us to keep secret from y'all. So
okay. All right. So you untrustworthy papists are holding out on us. I got you.
It's the third secret of Fatima. It was about Solomon Kane. So.
Oh man, we need to knock this out though, because my device here is getting ready to just go kaput.
It's been about an hour. We could wrap it up.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, this is a pretty straightforward story. I don't have a whole lot to bring up about this particular poem. I enjoyed it, and
I have the best distillation. I have seen this. The internet has told this story in its purest form, except for they used a dog as the main character because don't you have to? It has a police canine sitting at a computer with his paws on the keyboard. It says, "Saw bad man, bit bad man, end report."
I'd like to bring up one last theological point before we log off. The Puritans, of course, did not believe in purgatory, but here Sir Richard Grenville shows up like Hamlet's ghost, so he's clearly not at rest. He can't be in heaven, and if you're in hell, you never get out. Therefore, there is a subtle pagan papist influence in the background of the story. Because Solomon Kane, whether he likes it or not, has to fight for all Christian men against the barbarians and savages of the world.
Okay, well, Jeffro, did you have any final notes you wanted to throw on this one?
No, this has been great. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
You can't leave my comment. You can't leave my comment being the last comment. That's terrible. Come on, say something, someone.
I was going to trail off into vicious laughter.
Something Solomon Kane never does. That man never cracks a smile. That's why I like him. Even my icon, even my little icon looks a bit like him, doesn't it? All he needs is a buckle on the hat.
Yeah.
Fantasy Africa. Fantasy Africa is the coolest Africa. Pulp Fantasy Africa is just plain awesome.
Solomon Kane should have hooked up with Toto and blessed the rains. He could have got a whole lot more vampires all at once.
Yeah, you got harpies, ancient evils inside tombs that are being defiled by Arab slave traders. It's just literally got everything. It's all the best stuff from Tarzan with none of the bad stuff, like none of the tedious stuff. He really did. Now, granted, he had a lot to work with there, but just taking it all and that the verve, the power, the energy, and then there's no wasted space. There's no filler. There's nothing. It's just audacity, nonstop vengeance against evil and evildoers. And utterly remarkable.
I think Solomon Kane would have gotten along with Logan Sackett.
If it wasn't for guys like Sky Hernstrom and company, I would say that this culture and this civilization is incapable of producing something like this. But fortunately, there are people around who can work the old magic again.
Okay, well, we are almost exactly at an hour. So thank you guys for joining me, and God be with you.
And with you.